Hey, welcome to the latest edition of From the Horse's Mouth podcast. I'm your host, Phil Fersht, and joining me today is a very exciting character in the field of low-code, no-code technology, Gary Hoberman, who is the CEO founder of Unqork. Welcome, Gary.
Oh, thank you for having me here, Phil. This is an honor to be on with you.
So, not everybody who is joining today is going to be that familiar with Unqork. A lot of people will know of you, but maybe not know exactly where you're differentiating in the marketplace. So why don't we start off with what you guys are all about, how you founded the firm, and what it is you're trying to do in this market.
Yeah, I'm going to, if you could do the wavy lines, Phil, like we'll pretend we're going way back. So I don't know where you were in 1994, but I was a kid out of college, Stern School of Business in New York, and joined a big company called Bankers Trust. And it was, still not around anymore, right? I'm aging myself. And I was an engineer. Since fifth grade, I communicated with machines, starting in punch cards and Timex Sinclairs and VIC-20s. And I loved this idea that you could communicate and it listens. And communicate well, communicate poorly, similar to people. When I started in Bankers Trust, they assigned me a job. They said, go build a money transfer system. It's, a C++ and Sybase, the days of ODBC drivers, for those who remember. I did it very quickly, and I suddenly realized that was kind of boring. And if I do it well, they're going to ask me to do another one, like life is, of course. And so instead of building the one screen, I built a code generator. This is a code generator which you just populated a Sybase table with field names and table names, and it built the tables, the fields, the store procedures, the visual screens in C++. Within 6 months, 700 apps were built. And when you say built in those days, it meant burned on CDs and distributed to business users in the company. I accomplished climbing Mount Everest. So this was to me, it was like the coolest thing ever. I was nominated as one of the youngest assistant treasurers in the company's time. And I suddenly realized my calling. And my calling was not to build that code generator. The calling was, I got a call back from a business user saying, we accidentally sent out two $14 million wires and we don't know why, duplicate. Could you go find out what happened in your system? And there was a join incorrectly joined, a null condition. And, what I realized was there was a bug in my code. It wasn't perfect. And that's okay. I'm going to fix it. I know how to fix it quickly. It was impossible to patch 700 apps without each time deploying a patch and breaking the other app. Right. And you suddenly realize back then, so over 30 years ago, I realized that this concept of code generation, and it doesn't work. And reality is you replicate code, you replicate it. And replication is the thing that's holding back businesses. So I vowed 30 years ago to say, what can we do differently in software? And I went, climbed up the ladder at Citigroup, managing director. When I always built another version of this using XML, still not perfect. Went to MetLife as global CIO, built another version of this using, at that time it was JSON, and it was pretty cool, data structures, and then left the corporate world in 2017 to create Unqork. And as you said, this category didn't exist when we created the company, low code, no code. When we named it no code, every research group said that's a marketing gimmick. Do you remember those days, back in those days when the category did not exist? It was just called software.
I remember the RPA thing came out, and we were kind of the voice behind a lot of that. And that was in 2012, and we started to use the term low code a little bit. But then I didn't hear about no code until I heard about you guys.
Yeah, we're still the only ones, pure no code, let's say. And let me just explain the difference to your question. So specifically, if you think about code generation and writing code, average Java developer does what, 8 story sprints, 8, points per sprint or every 2 weeks. And that's kind of the average for Java. Code itself, I like to think of like you're creating a house. You're standing up the 2x4s. Before you do that, you agree with the business on blueprints. It's going to take 3 years to build this house. It's going to cost you $3 million. It's going to be great. It's going to be everything you want at the end. Here's the kitchen. Here's the furnishings. And you know what happens? You get into the house and nothing is what you wanted. And you're like, wait, the light's not shining here. Can we move the window? The answer is no. Too hard, too expensive, too difficult. Can we change the finishing on the cabinets? Absolutely not. That will cost you $50,000. And that's the world of software. It doesn't matter, agile, waterfall. That's just software. And so when you think about low code was this concept of like a panelized home. Like we'll pre-build 70% of it in the factory and we'll ship you these walls and you put up the walls. But then when we get it all done, we'll still come in and we'll do the finishing touches. The problem with that home is the second it's built, you still have all
Yeah.
the repairs. It's going to be bastardized to your taste and liking and it will never work. And so
Yeah.
the concept of no code was very different. It was, what if we actually, by the way, of course there's code. First off, the word no code was probably the wrong words we used because of course there's code. The code is behind the scenes. That code is locked in about 56 components. And those components, like a text box or a number or a panel, these components themselves contain code that our business and technology users never could see. They don't get access to. And the reason why that is we were able to make this honeycomb structure of components, push the code down so no one sees it but our team. And what it basically means is instead of 700 apps generated that each one has their own unique problems and support and maintenance teams, basically becomes a single code base you maintain across every client, every user, which means we could provide the security, the reliability, all the abilities, everything you talk to your clients about as far as what's important to enterprise software. But we do it in one code base we centrally maintain, which means all customers are scaling and growing together, which is very different. The second you let a user write code, it's creating a branch. It's creating a unique snowflake. When you want to upgrade the base, that house, it will break. And that is the major difference between Unqork vision and everyone else. It basically means every single customer using Unqork is making every other customer more secure, more reliable, more efficient, more compliant without ever thinking about that. And that was the vision I had. That was back to 30 years ago. It was the major reason why we created Unqork.
How are you finding today's market based on everything that's happened in the last 3 or 4 years, the whole hype curve of AI, and now there's all the noise around vibe coding, and you see firms like Replit, Cursor around the place. Has that helped you guys, or has that created more confusion in the market for you?
I mean, it's got to be the most exciting time for a technologist any time in existence. This must have been like when the first mainframe came out. It has to be like at that level in the internet. And just for me, when we think about AI and what it means, we're looking at it very different from everyone else. Now, with Unqork before AI, we were actually targeting and scoring 60 story points per developer per sprint, which is 6 to 8 times faster than a Java developer. So 600% better, not 30, 40%. So, when you think about all that aspect, it's kind of crazy because sometimes I feel like I'm Morpheus. Are you a Matrix fan, Phil, at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you could be Neo, I'll be Morpheus. There's just code all around us. We're creating more and more of it. AI-assisted code is just creating more and more code. Vibe coding is generating code. And the second you generate that code, when you want to change it and the AI isn't able to make the change, or it doesn't have the tokens to rewrite it the correct way, you're going to have to understand the code. You're going to have to debug it. You're going to have to actually jump in and understand. The big thing will be in this world of AI-generated code, the hackers will look at this world and say, wow, you know what? If I could break into one single open source library that's being used across all these firms, there will be replication across the world in the millions that becomes an annuity for years that they get to do. For us, AI is exciting. We brought on Dave Ferrucci, who in my mind is the top AI officer in the entire world, who built Watson to beat Jeopardy. He joined us as our head of AI and CTO. And the first time he demoed what's currently in alpha called Unqork AI, I didn't sleep for a week because what I finally saw was there is a world where AI could not just replace the role of the developer, as we've been focusing on, and that's what vibe coding does, is it takes out the developer. But what we just deployed to alpha actually knocks out the engineer as well, which means guardrails, practice, design, principles. How do you build reusable? All of those things that an engineer needs to think about. How do I actually use a service? And so for us, what we've been building and we deployed is this concept that you could actually communicate and just focus on your business requirements, your logic in English, nothing else. And what's different about that and vibe coding and different about that and AI bolted on top of low code is they're still replicating code. And the problem with replication, and a survey we did with HFS, which was incredible, problem with replication is, 93% of the CIOs we surveyed and CTOs, said tech debt is holding back their company. 93%. And like when you think about those numbers and that stats, all you're doing with vibe coding and AI assisted code is generating more code. So how do you generate cleaner code, better code? And that's the piece. So it is the most exciting time in our lives for sure.
Do you think CIOs are readier than ever to rethink how they build up IT? I mean, I was talking with someone from one of the leading fast food restaurants last week, and he said, we are so beholden to SAP and Microsoft and Ariba, these types of tools. They just feel completely strangled by these applications. They can't get out of it. But then I'm talking with somebody in the retail business, and it's a completely different mindset. And I realized in the retail space, if you don't completely pivot how you manage your technology, you're screwed. Whereas something like the fast food business, maybe you can afford to go a little slower. And the bottom line is, it feels like some companies are moving very, very fast. Others are still very stuck in the 90s, the ERP world.
It's interesting. So my view of AI, so there's a lot of people that think AI is going to knock out 20, 30% of the workforce in each company, automation. And you're reading about that. What I personally see happening is AI is going to enable the best products and services to take more market share. And those products and services which are subpar will go out of business. It's going to be a complete different cut in my mind of the market. Because, we recently demoed, Phil, to a CEO of a very large financial institution. What we showed her was this ability that in Unqork, we built an onboarding application, institutional onboarding application, where it basically enables you to do the work of opening the account in maybe 30 minutes versus 6 months. And that's the difference today. And we used Gen AI inside of it to basically help us get this done. Her reaction was she turned pale. And I'm like, wait, is there something? And she goes, we don't have the best product and service today. And the only thing we're relying on is a very long switching cost. So that switching cost is what's protecting us staying in business. You just took out the switching cost.
All right.
You just showed us that someone could move. So I think in the retail market, in fast food, I actually think it's going to be a different cut that we all experience. It's going to be a world of the best products win, and those don't make it easier to switch to them. So they could go out of business. It could be a very different shift in the market that we've never seen before. Now with that, Phil, like as a CIO, I went from banking to, after about 20 years in banking, I went to be a CIO of an insurance company. And I will never forget, visiting one of the businesses in claims and watching our technology that I now owned went down. 2,400 claims operators in this building basically stopped working for the next 30 minutes. And I said, how long is that? How many times has this happened? It was happening maybe 20 to 30 hours a month. And in banking, I could tell you the number of P1 outages I personally had in my software. It was like one, because we deployed something on a Thursday. We didn't think, we made a mistake. We were stupid. We deployed on Thursday and knocked out Tokyo trading. Hey, that was stupid. It didn't happen again. But when you think about it, I think that whole market is about to change, and legacy software as we know it. And I am more excited about taking over and refactoring mainframes and Java and .NET and COBOL, and we're doing this across the board, and moving that to Unqork and shutting it down. It is so needed in this world to move forward. And, it's the thing that's keeping all CIOs up at night. It's like, that's probably the most exciting thing.
So you're seeing more opportunity with really old stuff and old mainframes and new systems than maybe even some of the ERP systems at this moment?
But to us, ERP, is like 60, 70,000 tables and relational tables. And to me, that just means it should have been a NoSQL structure. It should have been designed in a different way. We recently competed in one of the, in HR. You won't think of us as HR. And we've done a few deployments in HR, review systems and, 360 feedback. And we've done compensation. We've done consultant payroll, even in public sector. You could build anything. So we have customers who've used Unqork to build their payroll system. And, we recently saw an RFP out there for what you would think of as a very large scale HR system where you would see the SaaS players, the Workdays and the Oracles, PeopleSofts and all the big. And we decided to see how far we'd get. So we actually and it was interesting because we went through the process and I think we were in the third round when they said, you need to provide this functionality. And it took us 4 days, one person to build from scratch everything they needed.
Right.
And I think the idea that SaaS is not going to be disrupted by AI is wrong. I actually truly believe we're about to see a world where AI enables you to describe your HR process custom to you, and the software is just going to form around you, secure, compliant, reliable, without ever supporting it again or maintaining it again. And that's the maintenance piece is the huge thing. 80% of tech budgets are in maintenance. It's not in the build that we keep talking about.
It's interesting. Yeah, so you mentioned the study we did. One of the things that really hit home with me was the sheer volume of services spending outstripping software spending. It's got 2 to 7 times in certain instances. Tell me a bit more about how that's going to evolve, because I know you work with a lot of the big SIs and some of the big consulting shops. How do you see the services industry evolving around SaaS and software as we look at the next couple of years?
Well, I absolutely agree with your concept as, services and software are going to combine into one, which could take the form of a outcome. We will give you an HR system that meets every one of your needs or give you an institutional onboarding system. Included in that is the services component because we've gotten so good at doing that. And the services might be delivered by Deloitte or EY or any of the others. Or maybe they're doing the opposite and bringing the customer the solution. And all of the technology needed is just componentry that they assemble and build it together. But, so when I think about the past, because I've done the largest, Salesforce or ServiceNow deals for Citi and MetLife. I brought them in, actually sitting there with, Frank Slootman or Fred Luddy in those times, or, we had, and the reality is the software is good for what it's designed. They all are. And then it created the services industry to customize it for your needs. So here's your box you stay in. You're perfect in that box. It's amazing. When you want to get out of the box and do more, there's a large scale services industry that was born around those products. And that is something which, when you think about that concept and that ability, AI is going to disrupt that. That's the piece, which is, if you could actually just speak what you want and maintain it in English, what you want, the roles of business and technology, kind of blur a little bit. And technology becomes architecture, governance, controls, compliance. And that's actually how it started back in the day. And the business becomes, I'm going to own my outcome. I'm going to own the actual end state. And that's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, I talk about it's like changing the wheels on a car while driving. So there's a lot of multi-billion-dollar services shops out there right now, and some of them desperately want to launch their own platform businesses. And HCL have got a $2 billion platform business. I know Cognizant, I think some other big software firms, services firms are looking to do it because the valuations are so much higher. But it also tells you there's, I think, a conflict between ultimately companies like Salesforce and ServiceNow trying to get into the services space with their agentic platforms and all this type of stuff. And then services firms who generally think these clients need more hands-on help. They can't just buy software and rely on very expensive consulting all the time. We're starting to see a real change happening with some services firms, not all, who are generally looking at sort of almost ring fencing emerging platform businesses and trying to brand and trying to develop them themselves. It's fascinating the areas that this market is evolving into. And I think if we look at a year and a half, we're going to get a whole different set of winners in this space.
Yeah. And, Phil, we have 7,000 production apps across financial services, insurance, public sector, healthcare. When we look at the apps, we actually get to see AI in use. We get to actually see it used in the applications, besides from what I was describing earlier, where it helps you create and maintain the software in use. It's real. If you think about, if you just minimize everything you read about AI and get rid of the photo generation, video generation, voice generation, all the creative aspect, what you get down to is it's a machine that could read a document and give you insights in the document. And just, if you stop there, that's probably 30% of the jobs in the enterprises today is just in that. If you just look at how do we use this to basically take a claim in, understand the claim, get the data from the claim we need to process. We no longer need to send this to an offshore to be indexed. We don't need to actually now store a PDF, have it indexed into a system, keyed in. Like, there is so much efficiency there that we're seeing. If you just look at what it's good at, not trying to do, I'm not sure if you're seeing this, but the word agentic is overly used across the board. And I think every company has a budget set aside for agentic without knowing what it means. If you just look at deterministic, like, I'm going to give you from a former CIO's perspective, 98% of the business could have been automated, no operations, with deterministic systems. It wasn't a technology challenge. It's normally a business problem. It's normally, and so, I think that we're overused, but we built our own agent. We see it working. We know what it could do as well. And it's amazing what's out there, actually, what you see. And it's not just the one thing I would tell your audience is we are personally seeing models that are good within region/product/use case. So we have a matrix of, like, if you're in Asia, or if you're in Europe, or if you're in US, or if you're doing claims, or if you're doing new business, or if you're doing mortgage, like, here are all the different models are getting good at this, but we're also seeing them leapfrog each other. And of course, the foundational models are getting stronger. So the one thing you don't want to do is ever bake a model into a system.
Yeah, no, I completely with you there. And I see ultimately three technologies impacting. We call it the services and software flytrap, but you've got LLMs coming in as a real tool for content. You've got agentic if it's real agentic, it's the orchestrator. And then you've got vibe coding as the producer, right? Do you see what you're doing as a layer that just brings that all together for clients? Is that where we're going?
Yeah, we are the glue. So it's Unqork AI. We were first naming this all different components. We basically said it's just Unqork AI. So in Unqork today, you could create a visual diagram showing the process flow and the automation. Step 1, Phil gets it. Step 2, Gary. Step 3, it goes to an automated system, and an LLM will kick off and actually operate on it to tell you next step. And it's dynamic, which means you could actually orchestrate a agentic workflow, which is what would be called. Within each step, you could then also bring in various models. You could bring in correlation models, which are deterministic. You could bring in LLMs. And within all of those, you could basically orchestrate this. Now, the thing that no one's talking about is security, reliability, repeatability, explainability. That's what's critical to enterprise. That's the most important thing is, can I show a regulator what happened? And when we built, a lot of the reasons why banks brought us in to do onboarding, wealth management or institutional, is we could repeat a transaction. So if you generate code, if you allow a user to write code or override your code like low code does, you can't repeat the transaction because that code might have changed or the runtime it runs in might have changed without you knowing. You have no control. With the abstraction layer we did in components and this honeycomb shapes of all the different components, we could actually repeat a transaction and store it as a vault to say, here's what happened. In AI, that means we could actually show you what were the inputs and outputs and explain that back to the user what happened. In that case, you could look at underwriting in an insurance company. And you could say, that's a process which it really is following a series of a run book. Data is going to come in all different forms. The LLM will extract it out. IDP will extract it out easily. It goes into a processor. It's looked at and basically assessed. Correlation engine kicks in and scores all the different parameters for you to say what's most important. And maybe a human does do a final check, but it's no longer waiting months to get processed.
Yeah.
That's real today. That's not futuristic. That's today. And we see that regularly within all our clients.
Yeah. So what do you see as the role of the hyperscalers as things evolve a bit more? How do you see that evolving as we look at the whole convergence of services and software?
Yeah, to me, first off, like day one, we said we're cloud agnostic. So Amazon, Google, Microsoft, we're in all three marketplaces. Amazon is our largest partner, and we are partnering them right now on their transformation product, which is pretty cool. So using their Transform Kiro suite to basically automate Unqork build.
Interesting.
That's a really good. Then we look at Google. We're launching our AI on Gemini. We tested all the different models and foundational models. We picked Gemini, we launched it. We're using their security suites. And of course, Microsoft, we're integrated to Teams. We're integrated. If you get married in New York City, that's Unqork and Teams. That's actually doing the marriage license and issuance. And so they're all three have their strengths and the weaknesses, I would say. In the future, I think they're all also going to have to figure out their role within the AI space. And I don't think it's clear yet in that. We are being asked from our clients to offer Unqork inside their cloud, inside their Amazon, their Microsoft, their Google, instead of us hosting it for them. And we call that Unqork on the Edge. It'll be available this year. It's high in demand. And the reason why we're being asked that is because there's starting to be, especially on the financial service side, a mistrust of SaaS hosting. And, it combined with, hey, I could use AI to build that myself. So the ability to basically package Unqork and deploy it inside someone's firewall, behind their firewall, while we still maintain it for them remotely, that's what we call Unqork on the Edge. And so I actually think that abstraction over the cloud opens up a lot of questions for the hyperscalers and where the direction. And we're excited by partnering with them. They are our largest partners today. And so I think that they have a huge role in the future. It's interesting to see all their strengths and weaknesses play out in the AI world that we're entering.
Fantastic. Well, Gary, this has been phenomenal hearing just how you're evolving during this market, because the market's sort of playing to your strengths more than the other way around, I feel. What's your advice maybe to young developers today? Maybe, we I did a great pod with a Gen Z guy the other day who was just giving me a feel for what it's like. Being Gen Z in New York City at the moment. But tell me a bit, what's your advice today to young developers, young folks who want to evolve their careers in our space?
To me, it's logical thinking, design, architecture principles, understanding the big picture. Technical debt has two different definitions. One is the software which actually is behind patches, software that's out of date, software that you need to patch it or get upgraded and it's waiting there to do. The other definition is it was designed poorly. The business needs to change that one module each year for compliance reasons to comply with the government regulations, and it wasn't designed in a way to make it easy to change, so it's impossible. I think understanding that mentality is not even a computer science principle. It's a logic principle. It's a reuse principle. I saw an article come out recently, which, and this would be, Phil, if you ever want to do a really good debate, I go get you the name who wrote this, but it was basically the concept that apps should be, there should never be open source or libraries. There should be no reuse in an application in the AI world. It should just be written. Each time you need it, it should be written. And
Right.
The reality is, whoever wrote that has never, ever gone through an ethical hack, never actually understands technical debt and upgrades. And the reality is, if you have 7,000 apps like I owned as a CIO, like each day there are 600 vulnerabilities every week created in the world. How are you going to maintain that across each replication, every instance? It's impossible. It would be a good debate is on componentized modular architecture on Unqork versus a, app by design, app principle. I truly recommend, though, I would say my son is also a university sophomore, and I tell him all the time, computers, data science, understanding data principles, understanding transformations of that data to make sense and insights, it'll play out in finance, it'll play out in computer science, it'll play out in AI. It's a common skill, and that's where I would say focus. That's absolutely where it is.
Yeah. When you think about it, I'm a little younger than you, but not a lot. I remember 94, I was just finishing my last year at university. The access to information kids have today that we didn't have back then, it's incredible. I mean, they probably know more than we do about most things. They just don't have the experience or the emotional maturity to maybe get on in the space. So it's sort of like if you can get that balance between bringing in that young talent and mixing it with experienced people who are really embracing what's going on right now, I think you can have a tremendous time.
Is it experience or is it work ethic? And I'm curious what you think, because, as a entrepreneur, like I managed 10,000 people and then I created a company with one employee and then got to, so the reality is you get to see the same employment concerns, the same employment profiles. We are remote first because our talent is dispersed and we search for the best talent wherever they are. Right. But we also expect, just as long as you're getting your job done, doesn't matter where you're located, as well as there's another whole principle though, which is return to work 5 days. Being in the office, it's interesting to see the dynamic of the two and where that plays out. But yeah, it's cool.
I think work ethic is really important. Passion. Anyone who says they don't have time, they're really saying they don't have the passion for something, because people will always make time. Hey, people will always find that time to go to see a Taylor Swift concert or whatever they like to do with their spare time. It's about passion. And whether you work at home or you go to an office, it's about you have to now manage your own careers and these emerging, really advanced apps that are, I'm an analyst. My job has never been so much fun as it is right now. I've got tools that freaking know me. They literally know me. They're practically talking to me right now. I get my morning digest of, Fel, this is what's going on in services and software today. And I'm like, wow, this thing is educating me. And it's enabled me to be way more dynamic at the job that I do. And I believe that enthusiasm I have is paying off to my clients, because they're looking at me thinking, this guy knows what he's talking about. And I think this is the same for everybody. If you can generally embrace what's happening around you and get really good at what you do and leverage these tools in a way that's really smart, I think we're going into a really exciting future. And all this crap about the AI bubble about to burst and everything like that. If you think today, if OpenAI decided we're going to cancel everyone's subscription for a month, and they went to, hey, Gary, what are you spending, $20 a month? It's now 60. You're going to spend the $60, right? This stuff is now completely impermeated in our lives, in the way we do business, the way we do everything. And if we think that this is one big bubble that's just going to collapse around us, maybe there's an economic impact at some point. I'm sure there could be, like cyclical. But I don't believe this AI is a bubble. I think this is generally a huge load of excitement. It's permeating every industry, banking, insurance. You go into some of these industries now, it is so embedded. I just think we're going into a completely new world.
I would just feel like I said, if you look at just what it can do today, reliably, consistent, in just IDP extraction of data from documents. So we're still in a world where documents exist. We're still in a world where paper and documents are being used. Even if you move the whole mainframe to Unqork tomorrow, those documents are still going to come in and you got to get them into the systems. You can't imagine how much of the workforce population is doing just reading something and translating it. That's it.
Yeah.
If you just think about that's trillions and trillions of dollars of value right there. Thinking about those functions differently is what intelligence. Phil, if you're an underwriter and I ask you, hey, Phil, like a week ago, you underwrote this marine transit company here. Why did you approve them? What were you thinking? And you couldn't tell me. But if you could open a log and see the report and see what the AI did and the steps it took and what it looked at in the analysis, that's actually very powerful. That's actually now enhanced better than a human could do. And that's where we have to focus, is not just trying to replace what we're doing, but how do we make it better? And be excited by that. I've always thought that if I could eliminate my own job as a CIO or CTO or whatever position I had, I always thought there's a bigger and better job I'm going to do that's more meaningful. And I think if everyone thought that, AI would be everywhere. Like that's I think they call it the termite principle, is what I heard. But
yeah.
But
you and I are lucky, Gary, because we don't have in that. The more we can eliminate our jobs, the more fun we're going to have, because we're answerable to our clients. We're not answerable.
It's funny. So I wake up every morning excited for the day ahead. And every time I pitch Unqork to a CEO or a CXO, COO, and I still do all those pitches, it's exhilarating because I'm watching almost like Morpheus show Neo, here's what the world is around you. And that destroyed world with the nuclear fires. And that's your technical debt, that's your legacy, and it's holding you back. And it's the first time, Phil, the CEOs are saying, I actually know what tech debt means. Because I used to do this pitch and have to stop and define tech debt for them. Now I don't. Now it's like, I get it. Actually, this makes sense. They all know it's holding them back. And that survey we did shows that as well. So it's a good place to be in. You need that passion. You need the grit. I always said New York City is the place of passion and grit. You could do anything there. And you need the excitement as well when you wake up in the morning for doing something new, which I know you have. And it's very clear with your results, of course, and what you've been achieving is amazing at HFS. So it's awesome.
Yeah, thanks very much. Good. Well, thank you, Gary. I look forward to airing this to our audience, and thank you for just shedding the whole new perspective of what no code actually means to the industry.
Thanks for tuning in to From the Horse's Mouth, intrepid conversations with Phil Fersht. Remember to follow Phil on LinkedIn and subscribe and like on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite platform for no-nonsense takes on the intricate dance between technology, business, and ideological systems. Got something to add to the discussion? Let's have it. Drop us a line at fromthehorsesmouth@hfsresearch.com or connect with Phil on LinkedIn.